Hello. Hey, everybody. How are you doing? Let's see if I'm on there. Oh, I'm there. Yay. I switched to my earpods this week because I couldn't find my wired earphones and it looks like they're working. Yay. So we have audio. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. It's the last live stream of 2021. I can't believe we made it this far, but we have. I hope you all are joining me. If not, I'm assuming you're watching the replay, which is fine. A lot of people are busy this time of year, so you don't get to join me live, but that is okay. We are going to do a little review of all the amazing things that we learned together this year. And it was really fun putting this one together because it was... I mean, there's so many cool things we went over this year, and it was really fun for me to kind of go, oh my gosh, that thing we went over and that thing. So I hope you enjoy this one. I'm really excited to kind of touch base on some of the things that we went over, and hopefully you will find it fun too. So let's get into it. We are doing You Be the Behavior Consultant, a live stream I like to do almost every Monday. Can you believe it? We did 45. Well, this is going to be number 45 this year. That is pretty good. That means I only missed, what is that, 7? I can't do math. Anyway, how does it work? I usually present a topic for discussion. We like to be interactive here, so you guys are welcome to share some of your highlights of the year. We'll get into these topics a little bit more. I have a few videos to relive some of these topics, and then we'll do a little recap at the end. So what are we getting into? Our learning light bulb moments of 2021. Woohoo! We did 44. This one's number 45. Okay, there we go. I did the math for me. We only missed 7 Mondays. That's not too bad. And we're going to get into what were your favorite learning moments, and if you have any ideas of things that you would like to address in 2022, that would be great. Obviously, I'll keep searching for new topics, of course, and you know, this means. This combined with 2020, which is when I started doing these, we have well over 80 topics in animal training fundamentals for people to explore and enjoy and get into. So if you're a member, you get to enjoy all those. So I don't know. I don't know if we've got, we don't have that many people on with us this week because it's a holiday week. So I may just go ahead and get into some of these topics that we went into. You are welcome to hop on the chat and add your 2 cents, or if you think of any topic along the way that we went over that you would like to comment on, please do. And of course, if you can think of any topic that you're like, oh my gosh, I hope you'll get into that next year, please share that in the chat there. But I picked 10 because, you know, it's good to do a top 10 every year. But of course, if we don't get through all of them, that's all right too. So I've got plenty to keep us busy if you're feeling kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to share my thoughts. Oh, I see my phone froze a little bit there. Let's see if it's coming back up there. Okay. All right. So here's and tell me if it's frozen for you up there, guys. I see on mine it kind of froze a little bit there. All right, so here's some of the cool things that we talked about that I really enjoyed discussing, and definitely give me your feedback if these were topics that were fun for you. So the first one, adjunctive behavior. Oh my gosh, such interesting behavior. And I don't know if you guys remember discussing this that day, but let's first talk about what the topic is. So adjunctive behavior, also called interim behavior. So when an animal is on a schedule of reinforcement, so, you know, think about, you know, food isn't just sitting there in front of them all the time, but, and again, it can be not necessarily just food, but anything that, you know, some kind of appetitive or something that they're seeking to desire or seeking to engage with, and it's delivered on this intermittent schedule of reinforcement. In between time, it's thought of as potentially an aversive time period, that they're basically waiting for reinforcers to occur. And so they're filling that time with behavior, trying to seek reinforcement. And so they do behavior in this interim time that is totally unrelated to the behavior that they may do when reinforcers are delivered. And so it's this really weird behavior. And so sometimes it can include drinking excessive amounts of water, like even 3 times their body weight. It might include self-injurious behavior. It might include repetitive behaviors. It might include eating food items that aren't eating items that aren't food, redirected aggression, all sorts of crazy stuff that isn't related to the behavior that they normally would do to get that reinforcer on that intermittent schedule. And we know that it can increase when there's deprivation, and it can increase when those lengths of times are increased in between delivery of reinforcers. And so to me, this was so enlightening, and I don't know if you guys remember this discussion, but it was really enlightening into our own behavior, because on that day, my computer was acting up, and I had to run to the store to have them do something to get my computer working, and I remember anxiously pacing, waiting for my computer, so I was even engaging in adjunctive behavior. So this to me is a topic that I think about all the time when I see some behaviors that seem like, oh, that's kind of a weird one, and it doesn't seem related to, some history of reinforcement. So this is one that I keep in mind a lot. And I know this is not the most fun video to watch, but we'll just look at this little video of a pig doing some chewing on some bars. And, you can see not living the most enriched life there. And it may be the one thing that it's waiting for is when food's going to be delivered. So, these are the kinds of things that pop into your mind when you're seeing behaviors that seem to have like no explanation as to why they might be occurring. And, it might prompt you to start looking into adjunctive behavior. So that's a topic for me that's really fascinating. And again, it first kind of popped up for me when I started seeing behaviors in my history working in free-flighted bird shows, that I was like, why are these animals drinking so much water? And so, things like that, or eating weird things that aren't, food items for them. So things to think about. So that was one topic for me that was a really fun one to dive into. So let's look at, there's Adrian. Good morning, Adrian. Good to see you here. My phone over here is shutting off. Why is it doing that? There we go. Oh, and it's summer today, 71 degrees in central Arkansas. Yeah, I think we have a warm one here in Texas too. We tend to be in line with you, I think. All right. So what's another fun topic we covered? And you guys are welcome to hop in with comments on topics that we discussed this year that were fun for you, or commentary on the topic that I'm on here. What might be the difference between adjunctive behavior and stereotypies? Excellent question. Okay, so I think the big thing with adjunctive behavior is that the behavior that the animal is doing seems to be unrelated to the reinforcer that's being delivered. So sometimes with stereotypies, we can identify the particular reinforcer that's being delivered, that's maintaining that behavior. But with these adjunctive behaviors, it seems to be so unrelated to any kind of reinforcement. You're like, well, what's maintaining it? What's the reinforcer maintaining it? I don't see it. I don't understand where it's coming from. And so like with the animals that drink tons and tons of water, you can give them tons and tons of water, but they'll still participate in this excessive water drinking, even though they have, you can supposedly quench their thirst, but they'll still do this excessive water drinking. So it doesn't seem to make sense. That's part of the thing with adjunctive behavior that is really interesting compared to some other types of behaviors. So with like a typical stereotypy, you might be able to say, I can see the reinforcer that's maintaining that, like they do that to get automatic reinforcement, or there's somebody gives them attention whenever they do that behavior, and so it's really easy to identify the reinforcer that's maintaining the behavior. Whereas with the adjunctive behavior, it seems really unrelated. You're like, I don't get it. I don't see where the reinforcer is that's maintaining that behavior, but it's really these schedule-induced behaviors that it seems to be related to the schedule, and trying to find something to fill this interim behavior that's reinforcing. So it's really fascinating stuff. Yeah. So a good one to go back and listen to, right? That's why I picked this one as one of those ones that I think is really cool. Yes, I know. Cool topic. I'm telling you, man. So another one we went over was assent versus consent, because we see these words kind of used interchangeably, but I thought it was really good for us to, see what's the difference. So what is the difference? So in assent, this means that the individual or animal means to agree with opinion, approval, or permission. In other words, the participant agrees to what is happening, and that agreement can be nonverbal, and that can be expressed with one's actions or conduct. And assent usually means a stronger agreement than consent, which just says, well, I acquiesce. And so with consent, that is usually permission for something to happen, and the participant can reluctantly consent, but at the same time may not assent to what is happening. So that might mean, that the person signs on a document that, yeah, I'm going to agree to let the surgery happen, but maybe they don't want to participate in the surgery, but they've given their consent, whether it's verbal or written. So when we look at animal training, we're really looking for assent, that the animal is agreeing to participate because it wants to participate, not because it acquiesces, right? So this was one of those things that, it would be nice to get our language a little bit more precise on. And how do we evaluate that? So I think this is where, since we don't necessarily have a verbal language that we're going to be using with animals, we started talking about, can we look at behaviors that might say yes, and what might those behaviors be? So it could be affiliative behaviors like soliciting play, or allogrooming or allopreening, offering trained behaviors, but this is where it gets a little tricky, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. Approaching the trainer, engaging with the trainer, accepting food items or other appetitives, but we have to be beyond that. So we also want animals showing relaxed and calm responses or eager to participate responses. We also want to see that body language, because we also know an animal may come up and take and snatch food and run away, or hesitantly take food, or take food to get it out of the way so that they can show aggressive behavior. So it's not just taking food. We also need to see body language that looks calm and relaxed. So that it means a little bit more than that. Let's see, allowing you to pick up a foot for nail trims and a parrot offering you a foot for nail trims. So what's the difference? Yeah, so I think those are really good details to evaluate and maybe operationalize a little bit better. And this kind of led us to some discussions about start buttons and assent, because some people were saying, well, if I have a start button, if I have a specific behavior that the animal does, and that's, maybe isn't that saying, yes, I'm ready to go on to the next thing. But we talked about how if there's just one behavior that the animal does that says, yes, I can, go on and do the rest of your thing, like we could even use your example, Adrian, of offering a foot. Maybe, I offer a foot and then you can trim the nail. So let's say that's a start button. It's, you may have done a really great job of reinforcing heavily, lift up a foot. And so the animal's likely going to lift up a foot, because if you're a good trainer, you will have reinforced that heavily, right? But we don't know if it's true choice, because the animal doesn't have several options. So if we want to make sure that the animal is really saying, yes, I want to do that behavior, then the animal should have the option between at least two, if not more, different quote start buttons to really be able to say, oh, I have an option of doing several things that earn the same consequences, in order to say that, okay, now the animal's telling you, yes, I want to do that behavior. And I know that I will still get the same consequences that I would have gotten if I chose that start button or that start button. And so that's how we would really know. But if you only had one option, then the animal really, only has one way to earn those reinforcing consequences. So we need to have several options in order for it really to illustrate that the animal has options, right? And yeah, and Annetta says, ask yourself what the animal gets if it doesn't participate. So if there's only one button, it gets nothing, right? So there needs to be more options. And also, how critical is the reinforcer? Yes, the critical consequences. If it's that's the only way it can get its food, and it only has one start button, then you know it's going to pick that one start button. So that's why it's not really a good representation of choice. You need to have more options in order for it to earn those same reinforcing consequences. So very good point. Did I have a video for that one? I don't think so. No, I didn't have a video for that one. So you guys got that one very well. Yay. Okay. Do you guys remember talking about automatic reinforcement? Ooh. So this was a fun one as well. So this is automatic reinforcement occurs independent of others. So we think about self-stimulatory behaviors are said to be the result of automatic reinforcement. So I liked this little quote: if it sounds good, looks good, tastes good, feels good, smells good, good to the touch, or the movement itself is good, it may be automatically reinforcing. So these are things that are maybe outside of our control, right? We can't necessarily deliver that reinforcer. The animal has control of that reinforcer. So some examples could include scratching an insect bite, nail biting, tail chewing, feather damaging behavior. So we are not necessarily in control of delivering that reinforcer. The animal is, but it doesn't mean we can't still use that to manage or to reinforce behavior. And I think you guys may remember this example that I gave. Let me show the video here. Remember my buddy Luther. So my dog, this behavior is automatically reinforcing. He's in control of the reinforcer. And you may recall he was digging holes in places in my backyard that I didn't really like. So what did I do? I filled in the holes and that was basically he was gravitating towards, that were sort of in the middle of my yard. And I put grass seed over them, and I put a fence around those spots and let the grass grow. So he was less likely to go over there and get the automatic reinforcement from digging in those spots. And then I made this spot, which was one of the places where he went, but I didn't mind it so much. And I added a whole bunch of extra soft soil there that didn't have any fertilizers or anything in it. And I made it bigger. I made it deeper. It's also kind of a nice spot. If it's sometimes a day it gets sun, sometimes it gets shade. And so it was much easier. I basically made it hard for him to dig in the places where I didn't want. I made it super easy for him to dig in the place where I did want. And so it became easy for him to go over there and dig more frequently. And again, it was automatically reinforcing. The reinforcers delivered immediately. And so now, and he still, to this day, that's the place he runs to dig, which works out really well for me. So just because a behavior is automatically reinforcing doesn't mean you can't do something with it if it's problematic, I should say. All right. Let's see. What else did we talk about? Oh, another one of my favorites. Oh, let's see. Chris says, I've read that the stereotypic behavior may be reinforcing to the animal, which kind of makes sense since that behavior is repeated. Does that make sense? Yeah. So there could be automatic reinforcement for some stereotypies. So that is, like the automatic reinforcement there. So that is one of the things you might have to explore. So, and again, each of those is an individual case we would have to examine a little bit to know more details. And again, so, some of the repetitive behaviors could be adjunctive. Some could be just, reinforced by external reinforcers. Some could be automatically reinforced. So it all depends on your situation, right? So on to another one of our cool topics, contingency awareness. So we kind of did this spread out over different live streams. Like we talked about punishment awareness, and we talked about negative and positive reinforcement working together. And I really love this one. Those of you that went to the GOATS Summit back when Perveen Farhudi did her presentation, this was such a good one because she really helped us see the contingencies a lot better. And I think a lot of us, didn't have a lot of experience with that. And I feel like my skills at this have grown since that presentation. And hopefully all of us are seeing these a little bit better now. But I think in the past, a lot of us were really good at observing when positive reinforcement was occurring, but not necessarily noticing all the other contingencies that are influencing behavior all the time. And so that's kind of what this slide's about, is that, we do a great job using positive reinforcement, which is great, but we may not, and seeing it, but we may not notice that negative reinforcement and positive punishment may also be influencing behavior at the same time. And sometimes we don't even notice their effect anymore because the animal has already learned from that experience, and so it doesn't really need repeated exposure to those contingencies to do behavior or maintain behavior. And a lot of us have been learning about nonlinear contingency analysis that lets us know that these contingencies are happening and overlapping and influencing what learners are doing all the time. And just because we're not noticing them anymore, it doesn't mean that they're not there. So it doesn't mean that we're advocating for people to be, more heavy-handed in their training procedures. It just means that we're advocating for a better awareness of all these things that are going on. And it says, I love the lawn example, why you mowed your lawn. So many contingencies. It's funny. I almost put that picture in here. I have different contingencies that maintain whether I mow my lawn or not. The one I did put in here was rating the aversive stimulus about hotel soap. I one time used for years, because I used to travel so much before the pandemic, I frequently used the soap in the hotel. But one time I used hotel soap and I got hives all over my body, and I said itchy welts, and it turned out to be hives. And I have never used hotel soap since. It took one punishing event, one bad experience, and I have never used hotel soap again. And so I always travel with my own soap because of that. Yeah. So, so lesson learned that one time. But it doesn't have to be that extreme. Some of the other examples I used in that particular one about punishment was, cooking quinoa. I think you guys gave me some, that I could get a rice cooker to help me with my quinoa cooking so that it doesn't boil over, because I tend to forget and the pot boils over. Yeah. So there's a lot of things, but I've shared this video before, and it's in the course, the new course I have about the secret life of the if-then contingency. But you may recall this video of the rhino backing up, and as I point out, when we watch this video, you can see the positive reinforcement pretty easily, but can you also see the other contingencies that help this animal learn to back up? So you want to say back before you walk with him. You can start about here. Back. Nobody wants to say the word. And then give him food. Yes? Back. Right. You see? See how that works now? Instead of just following me? Maybe we make this the last one if he goes out. Oh, I guess it's repeating now, huh? Sorry. I'll go back to the... Okay, yeah. Where am I? So here. Sorry. I was checking to see why it was working or not working on my phone there. Yeah, so do you guys remember what other contingencies... Well, I guess we could go look at the rhino again. I'll just turn down the audio. Dun, dun, dun. So you want to say back so you don't before you walk? Hopefully you can just hear me talking. There we go. Yeah, and I know we went over this in that presentation I did for IAZA, and then it's also in the in animaltrainingfundamentals.com. But we can see the positive reinforcement pretty easy, but there's also other contingencies that are helping this rhino to learn how to back up. It's not just positive reinforcement. And I know some of you know the answer already on this, but if you feel like sharing to help others see those contingencies as well, you can go for it. Whoops. Trying to get all my things working here. So the main thing that we look at is it going to play again? Yeah, and so well, it seems to have stopped there, so I may go back to this. Yeah, so Chris and Annette have helped out here. So the chute itself is providing feedback to the animal, and Chris and Annette say the fence are positively punishing. Yeah, so the chute itself is providing some information in the form of positive punishment and negative reinforcement. So what happens is the hips of the rhino, they are staying in the middle there, right? Instead of swaying to the left or the right. So if the hips sway towards the side and bump into the chute, the side of the chute, that's we assume is kind of an aversive event for the animal, and so the animal's got a history of learning that bumping into the chutes, if I sway my hips one way or the other, is going to happen, and so that bumping is going to increase the hips staying in the middle and decrease the hips from swinging out to the side. So we've got a little positive punishment and a little negative reinforcement that helps keep that rhino centered in the middle of the chute. And so those contingencies are occurring at the same time as the positive reinforcement that happens after the animal backs up all the way out there. So that's why we say there's more than just one contingency at work here. And that's really cool stuff for us to start paying attention to when we start looking at our behaviors and how we make them happen. All right. So this one was recent, but I thought it was pretty fun. We looked at Contra freeloading, and I love this one. I remember Chris gave us a lot of really good points about how Contra freeloading has been used to sort of justify our animal training, because it's been defined as the learner emitting behavior to work for food or resources when identical resources are simultaneously available in free form. And as we learned, as we looked more into this, there was several explanations for why contra freeloading may occur. And there were some things about, maybe the animal has prior training experience. Maybe it's neophobic of the place where all the free food is available. Maybe just seeing a stimulus change is reinforcing. Maybe it's doing it to learn information about new places to get food. Maybe it's just automatically reinforcing to forage. And maybe the different phylogenies of different species, the genetic history is why they go out and do this. But as we learned, it doesn't always happen. Why is that? And we saw that it doesn't happen when animals are too hungry or if the work is too hard, and that neophobia can occur in the other direction. So maybe, the new way to forage or get food is scary, or maybe there's nothing new to be learned, or maybe there's more important things to do, or maybe the age of the species influences whether the animal does the behavior, or maybe the animal needs buddies to go do the behavior, or a combination of these things. So what we started seeing is that this kind of looks like other things we see when we look at animal behavior, that if the antecedents aren't really in favor of contra freeloading, then the animal's not going to go contra freeload. So we kind of learned that it's really just like any other behavior. So if your antecedents aren't there, and if the establishing operations aren't quite right, then the behavior is not going to occur. So So what we kind of learned is that, we can't really go around saying that animals prefer to work for food and that's why they do it. It's really just a behavior that's going to occur under certain conditions. And if those conditions change, the behavior may or may not be emitted. So it's not really, sort of this blanket statement kind of thing. We kind of have to really just set up the environment if we want to see it happen, and reinforcement may occur. But then again, if those conditions aren't right, it may not occur. So I thought that was a fun one to dive into a little bit deeper. All right. And another one for me that was one that I just love. I just love this one. Counter conditioning. Oh, this was such an eye opener, I think, for so many people. And again, if you haven't watched this one, I highly, highly encourage people to go back and watch this one, because we're just going to touch on it for, a few seconds here. But counter conditioning. Dun, 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 dun. So I called this one the counter conditioning conundrum, to be quite honest. And that's because I think our animal training community has kind of been given a definition of counter conditioning, or maybe a picture of it, of what it looks like, that is different than what the actual definition is. So maybe it's just a matter of semantics. But because of that, it's really kind of messed up our training, I think is what it is. So I've got this little picture of a rat in a box, and this isn't a very pleasant experience, I guess, but it really helps accurately describe what counter conditioning is. So the way that it really works is we've got this, little rat. The floor that the rat is sitting on, you have to imagine that an electric shock can be produced through that floor, and the rat has been trained to press this lever to receive food. And what the studies were, on counter conditioning do is, when the rat can get food and a shock at the exact same time. And that's really, really important. So what they're showing is that they can make it more likely that the rat will press the lever, which it has learned will produce food, if that food is delivered at the exact, if that shock and that food is delivered at the exact same time, and the rat is trying to press that lever. But if there's any delay, so if that food is delayed when that shock is occurring and the rat's pressing the lever, it's not working, right? And so that delay is really significant. And so the important thing with counter conditioning is that food and that aversive are contacted at the same time. That's really, really important to counter conditioning. And I think that's one of the things that really doesn't occur in animal training. And even though, we talk about, like, we don't really care what the animal is doing and all that, that's valid and all that. But I think what doesn't really happen in counter conditioning most of the times in animal training is that the aversive and the appetitive don't happen at the same time. And so that's a really significant thing. And so if they're not happening at the same time, then we're not in the land of counter conditioning. And the other thing is, how is it working? And so the way that they think that counter conditioning is working is that it's just an extinction process, and that the food or whatever appetitive is being delivered is just kind of facilitating that extinction process. So those are kind of important things for us to think about. So, I want to show this this video that I know many of you have seen many times. And the reason I want to show it is because I have a different interpretation of it now than what I used to when I used to talk about it. I used to call it, I called it many things because I didn't know what to call it. And I think finally now, after going through school, I have the right words for it. But and I'll play it and talk over it. I used to call it systematic desensitization and counter conditioning, but I think now what it really is, based on learning more about counter conditioning, is that it's really just a very nice shaping procedure with a stimulus fading procedure. And so Wendy is delivering biscuits, reinforcing calm responses from the giraffe. The giraffe can leave that chute anytime he wants. And then she's slowly fading in this stimulus, this target. And then, so really she is reinforcing calm behavior. And with counter conditioning, we wouldn't care about what behavior the giraffe is presenting. And again, slowly fading in this stimulus. And reinforcing calm responses from the giraffe. So again, we're shaping.
If he does, you would deliver the food right after he checks it out.
And then along the line in the shaping procedure, he's going to give us behavior that we really want, which is touching that target. And so she gets to reinforce that as well. So it's just a change in the shaping procedure, just another step in that. So I think that's really what's going on there, as opposed to systematic desensitization and counter conditioning. So, so that was a really cool learning moment for me. The more that I dove into the counter conditioning stuff and learned more from people like Dr. Jesus Rosales Ruiz and the folks at Art and Science of Animal Training and all the people doing the constructional approach stuff, because they're the ones who are really trying to help us understand why there's value in using, things like, negative reinforcement contingencies when animals are showing that they want distance from something, and so again, some of you that have watched the presentation I did on that, where using removing the target as well as an option. So I think the reason I didn't do that with the giraffe is that for some animals, moving things also creates fear responses, right? So that, that's also a challenge. And so I had to, so sometimes you're making a decision, is moving something away going to make things worse? Or is it better to use a fading procedure? So in that thing, I used a fading procedure. Yeah, and so Annetta said, how would you define systematic desensitization? So I've thought about that, and I feel like I want to revisit the definitions of systematic desensitization personally, and I may be changing how I've defined it in the past, and not so much about the words, but what it looks like, right? Because I think that's what we sometimes have challenges with in the animal training community is what does that look like, right? I think we try to interpret the words and then we try to make and see what it looks like in animal training. And I think that's where we sometimes get hung up. So I think I need to revisit that myself and see if I can find what that looks like to me. But that's a great question. So I will have to revisit that and come back to you on that. Maybe that's a good one for next, again, like revisiting our definitions of habituation, systematic desensitization, and counter conditioning. I mean, although I feel like I've got a good handle on counter conditioning, I so much like the term fading, stimulus fading makes much more sense. Yeah. So, and I think I did do something on stimulus fading in one of our live streams. I'll have to go back and look at that, because I know I defined the term for us because it's in the glossary. But there's some really good work on stimulus fading. Yeah, it is a good question for a Tower Talk, which is tomorrow. Yeah, but I like that idea of revisiting those terms and what they look like, because I think I may have a different picture in my head now of what they look like. So good points, very good points. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, and Annetta says, yes, you did. Yes. And I did define stimulus fading, and yes to Chris for topics for tomorrow. All right. So here's another one of my very favorite things we talked about. this was about creativity, about generativity theory. And this one still sticks with me on a personal level. And this was a formal theory of the creative process that suggests that new behavior is the result of an orderly competition among established behaviors. And I thought about this when I wrote our topic, for today, when I was saying aha moments, because aha moments are really behavior science. And you may remember, the whole thing with the pigeon, pushing a box around to stand up and peck at a banana. This was from the Epstein and Skinner studies, the experiments they did to show that creativity may involve extinction, resurgence, and automatic chaining. And so it kind of removes the whole thing that behaviors are, coming out of trial and error. It's really that, it's all these things coming together and then new behaviors emerge. And what I really loved about all of that was that it gave us tools to be creative ourselves. And so ever since this live stream, I don't know about you guys, I do these things. These were recommendations from Epstein in his work. He said, these are things we can do for ourselves to help us be more creative. So like capture new ideas. Whenever you have an idea, write it down. Don't lose it. Pay attention to it. So I'm like one of those people now. I mean, I kind of did it before, but I'm even better about it now. The moment I have a thought, I write it down. You have notes on your phone. I write it down on my phone immediately wherever I am because I know I'm going to lose it. And this is a really important one. Seek challenging environments. You want to expose yourself to stimuli that will help generate ideas. Every instance of problem solving may involve extinction, resurgence, and automatic chaining. The individual subjects himself or herself to difficult and challenging tasks that require performance exceeding current levels of skills or knowledge. Managing failure as opposed to avoiding failure boosts creativity. So I do think for me, participating in school this year, it expanded my horizons. It taught me to look for new challenging environments and help me learn new things. Broadening skills and knowledge, I can get ties in that there with that as well. The individual seeks training, experience, and knowledge outside of current areas of expertise. The more diverse the repertoires of behavior, the more interesting, frequent, and surprising the interconnections. Have you ever noticed how inspired you are after a conference or a live stream? Like, so for me, some other things that I've, stretched out into in some other areas, like working on conference papers where you start reading things maybe from other fields that aren't necessarily strictly behavior analytic. You also question some of the things you read, which I think is good. But I also notice in some of the things that I read, even in behavior analysis, that many times those people are partnering with other fields as well. They don't necessarily always agree with what that other field is saying, but they'll look at what those fields are saying and look for the commonality. And I think that's really important as well. Change your physical and social environment. Changing your environments also provides new diverse stimuli. I know it's a little tougher right now with COVID, but I do think those things help as well. So all those things, I do think about those things. And Chris says participating in your live streams do it for me. Me too, Chris. Yeah. Well, and I tell you, one of the things I do is, I know we all have limited time, but I do listen to other people's, broadcasts and YouTube things. And I try not to do things where it's going to put me in a position where I'm, feeling like I'm too influenced by one person or another, but things that I want to learn about, I definitely listen to their things. And, like you guys, and this is not just to like plug Joe's book, but like Joe's book and stuff, reading new material that comes out, the nonlinear contingency analysis. Like sometimes it's hard to sit down and just read a book, but I have there's some textbook sites like Vital Source Textbooks where you can get access to a textbook online, and this book is in there, and I have it read to me. I can have it read aloud to me. And so I'll have, like today when I was taking a shower, even though I've read it before, it'll read a chapter to me while I'm preparing bird diets and taking a shower. And so, I can just reread a chapter, so to speak, even though I may have read it before. It's kind of nice to hear it again. Or I'll have a journal article read to me while I'm preparing things in the morning. So, or for me, sometimes it's a nice break from having to write up a report for somebody. I'll listen to a YouTube thing, and walk the dog or whatever. So those are ways for me to get those things coming into my world that generate more ideas. So I love that one. So I have to share this video because I think it's one of my favorite ones. You guys may remember this from when we were training birds for the show at Henry Dorley Zoo. And this was, I think this is Forrest, the raven. And he's supposed to put objects on a white circle. And he came up with a new way of doing that in this training session.
Pick things up differently. Good. Well, that one blew off. Okay. And I imagine, well, these are kind of heavy, so that'll be interesting. Don't hurt yourself.
Very heavy.
It's really heavy. Gotta figure it out. I know he's done those before, so otherwise it might be. Move it closer.
That is the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
Good boy.
I love that.
That is incredible.
I'm smart. I'm smart.
Can I get a tape of that?
Can we please? Oh my God. That was the best thing ever.
Pick things.
So that was always a fun one, I think. The fact that the raven problem solved that so that he didn't have to carry the heavy items over to the white dot. He brought the white dot to the heavy items. So a very fun one. All right, let's see. All right, how about overshadowing versus blocking? So I thought this was a good one too. We kind of got into a little bit of the neuroscience on this as well, although I just have this slide here. So if you guys remember this was about, again, well, you can see on the comparison slide here, they're both about stimulus control, except with overshadow, and they both have two stimuli paired together at the same time, except with overshadowing, whichever stimulus is more salient is the one the animal will pay attention to, and with blocking, whichever stimulus has more history is the one the animal will pay attention to. And we tend to think about this more as how is it going to be useful for us maybe in pain management, and that's when we think about the overshadowing stuff. But this is also helpful for us to know maybe when we're training and we maybe have like a little challenge in getting the animal to do what we want because overshadowing or blocking may be going on. And so that's kind of what the examples are here underneath each of these columns. So in the overshadowing example, they talk about maybe you're trying to train a dog to sit by holding a treat over his head or nose, and you're saying the word sit at the same time, but the food may be more salient, and so instead of paying attention to your verbal cue, the animal is so focused on the smell of the food that it's not really paying attention to your verbal SD. It's really all about I smell food in your hand. So the more salient signal is the smell of food, and so that's overshadowing the animal paying attention to the words that you're saying. And when we talk about blocking, let's say your dog knows how to sit whenever you present a hand cue, but he never does it when you just say the word sit. And because he has so much history with the hand cue and you're trying to fade in this word sit, it's blocking. The hand cue is blocking the verbal cue. And so you're just going to have to do a much better job with your fading procedure in order to get the animal to understand the new cue. And so right now the hand cue is blocking the verbal cue. So that's another way to help understand the use of those words. But I think for us, what we talked about a lot in that particular live stream was how overshadowing can be used as a way to help the animal pay more attention to the more salient stimulus, which might be, patting the animal on the butt, or using something like the shot blocker, so that they don't feel the pain of maybe a needle going into the skin when you're trying to do injection training. So that was a fun one to explore a little bit more deeply. And then another one of my favorites, because this one's really been, I think, very altering in terms of how people look at the learning processes, is helping people understand that negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment, those are learning processes. Those are, they're considered principles. They have definitions, but they can be used very differently in a procedure. And a procedure can also involve other behavioral processes like extinction. We might use differential reinforcement. You might use all sorts of stuff. I mean, a whole bunch of things that aren't even, things that you would think of off the top of your head. But the problem is that I think for a lot of animal trainers, we sort of have this tunnel vision of what positive reinforcement looks like, or what negative reinforcement looks like. But the reality is they can look so different anytime they're used in a procedure. So that's why it's really important to know the difference between what a definition is of positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, or any of these learning processes, versus how one might use it in a procedure, because it can look so different. And really helping people understand that, I think, has been life-changing for a lot of animal trainers, certainly life-changing for me, because it also takes away this whole sort of one of these is better than the other, or one of these is good and one of these is bad, because we don't want to label any of these as good or bad, because all of them can be used in a really appropriate way, and all of them can be used in a really inappropriate way. And that's why it's really important for us to understand the difference. I think we talked about ways that positive reinforcement can be coercive when animals have only one way to access that reinforcer. We could make it so that reinforcer is really potentiated, because maybe, the animal's been denied access to that thing for a long time. Maybe they're really, really desperate to get access to that thing. Maybe it's critical. Maybe it's food. Maybe it's water or something that they really need to survive. And now they're really, really desperate to get access to that thing, and they only have one way to get it. And they have to do something really, not pleasant to get it. Has been pointed out in research projects, you can teach an animal to tolerate shock in order to get a positive reinforcer, to get access, to do something that involves positive reinforcement. And I think most of us would not want to do that to an animal. And we would consider that not appropriate animal training. But if you were to define all the things that were going on in that procedure, it still would be a positive reinforcement based training procedure. So that's why it's really important to understand the difference between a procedure that uses positive reinforcement and what's the definition of positive reinforcement. So that's why a lot of us learned about, what is the function that's maintaining a behavior, or what's the contingency maintaining a behavior, and what's a functional reinforcer. And so a lot of you saw my presentation that I did several times this year about using negative reinforcement-based contingencies for animals that want distance as a reinforcer, especially with these animals that are showing extreme fear responses to people, or aggressive responses to people. So we can set it up so that animals are giving calm responses instead, and we can do it in a way that's a really kind of benign application of negative reinforcement, versus, maybe using negative reinforcement in a way that would, I think most of us would be like, oh, I'm not comfortable using that. So there's very different applications of these learning processes. So to me, this was a big eye opener for a lot of animal trainers, and I hope it was one that you guys appreciated. And again, we could go far down the rabbit hole discussing this one. And Annetta says she liked this one. I did too. All right, here's another one that I think was eye-opening for a lot of us. Timeout from positive reinforcement. I think in general, so again, we're talking a negative punishment procedure where something is removed in order to decrease behavior or future probability of behavior. And we have sort of a lot of blanket statements of, don't use negative punishment or don't use timeout from positive reinforcement. But I think one of the things we learned in this particular live stream is that there's different kinds of timeout. And I think the biggest thing is that there's the exclusionary timeout and the non-exclusionary timeout. And so with the exclusionary timeout, I think that's the one that most animal trainers were talking about that they don't like, where the animal trainer walks away or the animal is removed from the situation. And this is that situation that we traditionally see creates this frustration, and the animal doesn't know what to do to earn reinforcers, and we get aggressive responses, and maybe animals trying to block trainers from leaving, and we see fallout from this. But there is also non-exclusionary timeout, in which maybe the trainer pauses for a couple seconds or removes contact from the reinforcer for a few seconds and then re-engages with the animal and has the opportunity to reinforce desired responses. And I think this is something that we often do use, but we haven't defined it as such as a timeout. But it has been defined as such maybe in the human learning world. And so it's again kind of getting back to those semantics and sort of getting a little bit more comfortable saying, oh, well, maybe I do use a certain kind of timeout. And some people have been discussing maybe this is what's the first step in an LRS, that maybe it's this non-exclusionary timeout from positive reinforcement followed by reinforcement of some desired response, or just sitting there, not doing anything is okay, and that's what I'm reinforcing. So I think an example of the terminate specific reinforcer contact for me would be, let's say you're playing with a puppy or a parrot and they're doing a little mouthing behavior on you in sort of a play way that you're comfortable with, and you're like, this is okay, because I know a lot of us that work with parrots, young parrots like to kind of nibble on your fingers, but it gets a little too hard and you take your fingers away for a few seconds. And then you give them another opportunity to play with your fingers, as long as that mouthing behavior is gentle. And if they get a little too rough, your fingers are removed for a second or two or three, and then you give them another opportunity. To me, that would be that terminate specific reinforcer contact. So they've had a steady stream of getting to engage with something that is a reinforcing event for them, and then the moment that they do something that's undesired, they lose that opportunity to engage. And then it's continual contact with the reinforcer, and then they lose that contact the moment the undesired response is emitted, and then back to engaging with that. So that to me is an example of that. And then I do have this video with an orangutan, and again, this was the example that I gave during that presentation. And again, for me, definitely example of negative punishment going on here. And, is it planned ignoring? Perhaps. But, we'll let you guys evaluate and see what you think.
I don't want her. Oh, she can reach pretty far. It's good to know. I don't want her to do that. So I'm going to wait for her hand to go back in. Hand goes in. So I don't want that, so I'm not going to reinforce that. So when she puts her hand back in, I'm going to give her something to teach her that I don't want her to do that. Oh, we have a spitter over there. Put your hand back in. Good. Keep your finger, just touch with your mouth. I'm saying that's not the right behavior, that's the wrong.
So I think we're back to repeating there. But as you can see, you know, there's more than one contingency going on there. There's positive reinforcement for desired responses and definitely some negative punishment going on as well. And you know, she clearly would like someone to come a little bit closer there. So yeah. So it's a little difficult for me to say that I would never use negative punishment or never use timeout. You know, to me, those working together there were getting me towards my desired result. I think careful application was getting me towards my goal without creating undesired responses. I don't think that I would walk away from her in the sense of an exclusionary timeout, but I think this non-exclusionary timeout or, you know, use of negative punishment was helpful and getting towards my desired goal there. So some thoughts to think about, right? And those things. So right there, guys, was just 10, just 10 of the things. And Annetta says, I wouldn't say that you are ignoring the behavior, quite the opposite. And I think that's important. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not ignoring it either. So yeah, it's interesting, but I am like not giving her attention either. I'm not engaging with her. I step away, and that's why it's not exclusionary. If it was exclusionary, I would have been like out completely, you know, out of her sight, right? You know, remove the person from time and setting, removing myself. So, but you know, similar with like when people talk about LRS, they just stop, right? You know, you stop engaging for a few seconds. This discussion could get deep, right? Although LRS, you're supposed to be even less reactive. You choose to reinforce a small behavior in the right direction, but I also remove myself from the moment when she did the incorrect behavior. And she loses opportunity to do anything correct in that moment. Because I'm you know, far enough away that she can't do anything. So, yeah. I mean, she can't even do the right thing because I'm so far away from her in that moment. Taking her hand back in, explaining to her that this is what you want, right? But in that moment that I'm gone, I mean, we can watch it again. Let's watch again. Because, you'll stop now. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, that's what we're here for. I mean,
I'm going to wait for her hand to go back in.
We can watch it again. I can, gosh darn it. Why am I getting so much spam today? I'm going to turn my phone off and down.
So I don't want that. So I'm not going to reinforce
Day after the holidays, everybody wants to get in touch with spam. But yeah, so I have to, you know, obviously I have to remove myself far enough away because she can reach. That is part of the problem. Because those openings are small enough for her to reach pretty far. So I do have to move back. I try to time it so that the moment her hand is inside, I'm moving towards her so that it's pretty clear that that is desired. So I reinforce just that she brought her hand in, and that gives me an opportunity to give her an opportunity to reinforce mouth touching. But when the hand comes out, I have to step away.
I'm saying that's not the right behavior, that's the wrong behavior.
Or maybe it wasn't repeating before. I think I just turned it off too soon. And again, I reinforce just the hands on.
That doesn't work. That does work. Next. Get you extra.
There we go. Yeah, so I cut it off a little too early on you before, it looks like. Sorry. Yeah. Well, that one can keep us going for a while. Well, you'll have to go back to the timeout one and rewatch that one. See what we said about that. But good stuff to think about. And we are at 12:04, so I might go to the recap here. But as you can see, we covered. I mean, that was only 10 topics out of our 44. So. And obviously we get into all those things in a lot more detail in all the live streams because they all go for an hour at least. But I did want to thank you all for sharing your Mondays with me, or at least 44 of them, 45 now, or for taking time to enjoy the replay because I know some people can't be here live and you end up watching the replay. I hope these discussions generated some learning light bulb moments for you. They definitely did for me. I think right now our industry is evolving tremendously once again, which means we are in very exciting times for animal training. So, how exciting for us to be a part of this particular time of animal training. I love that we're kind of growing and evolving again. So I look forward to more opportunities to be a part of this process to learn and grow with you all. And thank you for your continued support, your friendship, and your interest in animal behavior and training. I'm excited to see where the journey takes us in 2022. And Chris says she can't wait for 2022. I know I have to see where all the learning will take me next year as well and what I get to share with you. So it'll be fun. I know for sure we have goats coming up and Annetta's here with us to share information with that on January 10th. Again, those of you that are members, you get to participate for free in the live, and the recording will be in the membership program. If you're not a member and you want to join, just go to atfgoats.com to register. And thank you. Always appreciated that you do these. Really enjoyed them this year. Oh, thank you. I look forward to 2022. Yeah. So Annetta's going to be talking about, those situations where the animals are not trained yet to participate in procedures, especially veterinary ones, and all the cool things that you can do to make it more likely that they will participate with little to no stress. And so she's got things about cooperating with veterinary teams to help get the job done, different kinds of cool gadgets that she's come up with. So this one's going to be a really important one for you that are looking for that, what do I do when I'm not quite there yet with the behavior being trained? And so I think we've all been in that situation. So this is going to be a good one. Annetta says, we are so much cleverer today than we were 45 Mondays ago. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And then members, tomorrow we do have a Tower Talk at 11 a.m. so we can discuss some of these things and who knows what else. So that'll be fun. And if you're not yet a member, remember you can always join and you can get that 25% discount off. We're still in COVID times. It's really been, keeping us challenged for the last couple of years, but we'll get through it. So if you still want to take advantage of that discount, use the code sunglasses and get your learning on. So I don't know, one of the things that I've also learned this year, we've all gone through some challenging stuff, but and again, especially learning about the constructional approach and all that was about changing. You can change your emotions by changing, your situation, and that emotions are, kind of the result of what's going on in your life. And so change your emotions by changing your situation. And so I've been sort of working on that, I guess. And so take action to change that situation and make yourself, make those emotions flow with it. So as they say, so that's kind of where I'm at. So there's a good article by Joe Lang about that, where he talks about how your emotions change with a bear running at you when you change your situation. So it's a pretty good article. Anyway, so we'll see where we can go with 2022 and how many we can crank out then. Yeah, it was fun to review like how much material we produced, and there's a lot. All right. Now, Adrian says, thank you so much for all your teaching this past year. Well, and thank you for participating, guys. That's really what, it is so much fun about this all, is having you all here, and the exchange, and all the people that watch the replays too. I really appreciate that, and if you're inclined to share, that's great as well. So I appreciate that. All right. Looking forward to next year. I know, I can't believe it. We're just a few days away. Cannot believe it. Who would have thunk it? Remember when we were all worried about, it going to the year 2000, and here we are, over 20 years later. Oh my gosh. All right, guys. Well, we're a little bit over our hour, but I think that's okay. But I do want to let you go and enjoy the rest of your day or evening, and I will look forward to seeing you next Monday. I am here next Monday, so we'll do one next Monday, and we'll see what it's going to be about. I don't know yet. Woo, who knows? All right, guys, you have a good day and a great new year. I will see you after the new year. All right, take care.